The horses refuse to move. Behind them, something unrecognizable drags through the dust, a body, roped to a chariot, circling Troy's walls for the 12th day. Achilles doesn't see a prince anymore. He sees the man who killed Patroclus. 12 days of dragging aren't enough. Nothing will ever be enough. The gods themselves weep watching this. Even Zeus turns away. How did the greatest hero who ever lived become this? Tonight, we trace the path from glory to grief. They called him the best of the Greeks. Swift-footed, lion-hearted, chosen by fate. But fate had poisoned the gift. Glory and early death were the same breath. He knew. From the beginning, Achilles knew the choice: a long-forgotten life, or a short blaze that would burn forever. He chose the fire. What kind of love burns so bright it turns to madness? What kind of friend is worth more than your own humanity? This is that story. Get comfortable now. Find your warmth, adjust your pillow. This story has crossed 3,000 years to reach you tonight. By firelight, by starlight, by voices soft as memory. If you drift off before Achilles finds his peace, the ancient gods will understand. They've watched over sleeping mortals since the world was new. Let them watch over you. Our story begins before Troy, before war, before wrath, in the kingdom of Phthia, where a sea goddess held a newborn son and wept because she already knew how he would die. Thetis had tried to escape this. A goddess forced to marry a mortal, knowing any son of hers would be greater than his father, and would die young. She tried everything. Burned him in sacred fire to burn away mortality. Anointed him with ambrosia. Nothing worked until she remembered the river that bordered death itself. The river Styx. Black water that even gods feared. No mortal flesh could survive its touch, unless that touch made the flesh something more than mortal. She gripped him by the ankle, the only way to hold him, and plunged her son into waters colder than death. Where the river touched, his skin became invulnerable. But where her fingers held, that small patch of heel, the water never touched. The greatest warrior would have one weakness. His mother's desperate grip had sealed it. Years passed. The child grew beautiful and wild, faster than any mortal, stronger, fiercer. His father sent him to the wisest teacher in the world, the centaur Chiron. On Mount Pelion, in a cave filled with herbs and weapons, the wise centaur taught Achilles everything. Healing and killing, music and war, mercy and precision. Another boy trained alongside him. Patroclus, sent there in exile after killing another child by accident. He was gentler than Achilles. He was everything Achilles was not. Together they grew. Together they learned. And when the call came to sail for Troy, a war that would last 10 years and claim countless lives, together they answered. Charon's cave became their world. The wise centaur had raised heroes before. Jason, Asclepius, but never two souls so bound together as these. Achilles learned to kill with 17 different weapons before his 10th birthday. But it was Patroclus who taught him that not every battle needs fighting. The centaur fed them lion marrow and wild honey. He said it would make them brave and sweet in equal measure. Perhaps it worked better on one than the other. At night, Chiron taught them the stars. How to navigate, how to read omens, how the constellations told the stories of heroes who came before. Patroclus was older by a few years, exiled for an accident that haunted him. A boy's game turned fatal, a thrown stone, a life ended before it began. That guilt made Patroclus careful where Achilles was careless, gentle where Achilles was fierce. They completed each other like two halves of one soul. Thetis visited when she could, rising from the sea with gifts and warnings. Her son's fate gnawed at her like tide against stone. She told him of the choice: live long and forgotten, die young and be remembered forever. Achilles didn't understand, yet why she wept when he laughed at the question. The years passed like days on Pelion. The boys became young men. Achilles grew impossibly beautiful, impossibly strong. His fame spread even before he lifted a spear in war. Then came the news that changed everything. Helen of Sparta had been taken. 1,000 ships were gathering. Greece was going to war. Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, daughter of Zeus himself. Paris of Troy had stolen her from Menelaus, and now all of Greece demanded blood. Every Greek king had sworn an oath if any man stole Helen, all would march to bring her back. It was Odysseus's idea, the oath that would doom a generation. Thetis heard and acted. She knew the prophecy. If Achilles went to Troy, he would win eternal glory and die there. She had another plan. She spirited Achilles away to the island of Skyros and hid him among the king's daughters. The greatest warrior in the world, disguised as a girl. He called himself Pyrrha, the red-haired one. He learned to walk differently, speak softly, hide everything that made him Achilles. For his mother, he tried. But the Greeks needed him. The prophet Calchas had declared that Troy could not fall without Achilles. Odysseus, clever, ruthless Odysseus, was sent to find him. Odysseus arrived at Skyros with gifts for the princesses. Jewelry, fine cloth, beautiful things. He also brought, hidden among them, a sword and shield. The princesses reached for the jewelry. One reached for the sword. In that instant Odysseus knew. The disguise that fooled kings couldn't fool a warrior's instinct. Odysseus raised a war horn and blew. Achilles, without thinking, dropped into combat stance. Every line of his body screaming warrior, not maiden. Somewhere across the sea, Thetis felt her plan crumble. Her son had chosen. Glory and death had won over a long, safe life. Achilles sailed for Troy with 50 ships. His Myrmidons, warriors from Phthia who would follow him into any battle, any death. And Patroclus went with him. Patroclus had no oath binding him. No prophecy called his name. He went because Achilles went. In the end, that loyalty would cost everything. The Greek fleet gathered at Aulis. 1,200 ships, 100,000 warriors. The largest army the world had ever seen, waiting for wind. For weeks, no wind came. Artemis had stilled the air, demanding a price for passage. A price that would stain Agamemnon's hands forever. Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia to buy the wind. The fleet sailed on a father's grief. Achilles watched and said nothing. He remembered. The wind came, the fleet sailed. And across the wine dark sea Troy waited, ancient and proud and completely unprepared for what was coming. Achilles was first to leap from his ship onto Trojan sand. A prophecy said the first Greek to touch Trojan soil would die. He didn't care. He killed Cycnus within the hour, a son of Poseidon, invulnerable to weapons. Achilles strangled him with his own helmet straps. The war had its first lesson. Nothing could stop him. Word spread through Troy's allies like fire. The Myrmidons had come. The goddess's son had come. Battle by battle, the Greeks pushed inland. For 9 years the war ground on. Troy's walls held. Greeks died by thousands. But wherever Achilles fought, Greeks won. He was their hope, their weapon, their god. He sacked 12 cities by sea, 11 by land. He killed Trojan allies and princes and champions. His tent filled with gold and glory and captive women. Among the captives was Briseis, taken from a city he'd burned. She had watched him kill her husband and brothers. Now she belonged to him. Something strange happened between captor and captive. Respect grew, then affection. Briseis saw the man beneath the warrior. Achilles found comfort in her presence. Patroclus accepted her without jealousy. He understood Achilles needed different things from different people. His own bond remained unshakable, beyond possession. But in the 10th year something broke. Agamemnon, the king of kings, who sacrificed his daughter and led this army, committed a stupidity that would doom them all. A plague swept through the Greek camp. Apollo's arrows, punishment for Agamemnon's seizure of a priest's daughter. Men died by hundreds while their king refused to yield. Achilles called an assembly, demanded the priest's daughter be returned. Agamemnon, humiliated before the army, agreed, but demanded compensation. He chose Briseis. The king of kings sent heralds to take what belonged to his greatest warrior. Not for love or need, but to prove who held the power. Achilles understood perfectly. He released Briseis. He didn't blame the heralds, they were only messengers. but he swore by every god that Agamemnon would weep for this day. That night, Achilles sat on the beach and wept. His mother rose from the waves to comfort him. He asked her for one thing: make the Greeks suffer without me. Thetis went to Zeus himself and secured a promise the Greeks would lose and lose until they begged Achilles to return. The wrath had begun. The Greeks who first told this story understood Achilles perfectly. To them, honor wasn't pride. It was the only immortality a mortal could earn. Your name, sung forever. They called it Cleos, glory, fame, the echo of great deeds. A man with Cleos would be remembered when his bones were dust. Without it, death meant total erasure. And Tim, honor, worth, the respect your peers owed you. A hero without Tim was nothing, no matter how many battles he won. Agamemnon struck at Achilles' soul. Picture those ancient listeners by their fires, nodding as Achilles withdrew. They knew a man without honor might as well be dead. Better to let your comrades suffer. We might find his pride excessive. They found it sacred. Different time. Different truths. But the heart's need for respect hasn't changed in 3,000 years. Achilles withdrew to his tent and refused to fight. For weeks, he played his lyre while the Greeks died by thousands beyond his door. Without their champion, the Greeks faltered. Hector of Troy, noble Hector, beloved by gods and men, led the Trojans to victory after victory. Hector, eldest son of Priam, Troy's greatest defender, a good man in a bad war, fighting not for glory but for his city, his wife, his infant son. Where Achilles fought for glory, Hector fought for love. Where Achilles had divine blood, Hector had only human courage. The war made them mirrors of each other. Day after day, Hector drove the Greeks back. The ships that had carried them to Troy now became their last defense. Fire licked at the hulls. From his tent, Achilles could smell the smoke. He could hear the screaming. Still he refused. Honor demanded witness to the cost of disrespect. Agamemnon sent Ajax to negotiate, offered to return Briseis, add gold and horses and cities. Achilles refused. Some insults cannot be paid off. Patroclus watched his friend become something hard and terrible. The man he loved was disappearing into rage. The war outside seemed less dangerous than the war within. The ships burned. Warriors Achilles had trained and loved died calling his name. Still he waited. The gods had promised the Greeks would beg. He wanted to see it. Finally Patroclus could bear no more. He came to Achilles not with arguments but with tears. For once the gentler man demanded, "Let me wear your armor. Let me lead your Myrmidons. The Trojans will think you've returned. It might be enough to turn the tide." Achilles' heart cracked. He couldn't bear to see Patroclus weep, couldn't watch his friend's goodness drowning in his own bitterness. He agreed, but with limits. Push them from the ships, that's all. When they retreat to Troy's walls, come back. Don't pursue. Don't chase glory. Patroclus, promise me. They armed Patroclus in Achilles' armor. The greaves, the breastplate, the helmet with its terrible crest. When finished, even friends struggled to tell them apart. The Myrmidons roared to see their master's armor returning to battle. They didn't know, or didn't care, who wore it. The spirit of Achilles was enough. Patroclus fought like a man possessed. No, like Achilles possessed him. He slaughtered Trojans by dozens. He threw Sarpedon, son of Zeus, from his chariot and killed him. Zeus wept gold for his fallen son but did not intervene. Even a father, God could not break fate. The war had its own momentum now. Fire died on the ships. The Trojans retreated. Patroclus had done what he promised. Saved the fleet, turned the tide. Now he should have returned. He should have returned. But the glory was sweet, sweeter than he'd ever tasted. The Trojans ran from him like he was Achilles himself, just a little farther. 3 times Patroclus climbed Troy's very walls. 3 times Apollo himself struck him back. A god was warning him. He didn't listen. The 4th time, Apollo took off his helmet, stripped away his armor piece by piece, left him standing naked before Hector's spear. Euphorbos struck first. A spear in the back, coward's blow but legal in war. Patroclus staggered, weakened, no longer able to lift Achilles' weapons. Hector saw his chance. The man who seemed to be Achilles, who had killed his allies by hundreds, now crawled in the dust. Troy's champion moved in. Hector's spear found Patroclus's gut. Not Achilles, he saw that now. Something softened in the Trojan's face. This was not the enemy he wanted. With his last breath, Patroclus smiled. "You're third in line, Hector. A god struck first, then a coward. You only finished what they began, and Achilles will finish you." Hector stripped Achilles' armor from the body and put it on himself. It fit perfectly. The armor that would doom him now embraced him like a lover. Greeks and Trojans fought over Patroclus's naked body for hours. Ajax held them back with his great shield, while others dragged the corpse to safety. They brought him to Achilles' tent and laid him at the entrance. The messenger who told Achilles couldn't meet his eyes. Some news breaks the teller. Achilles didn't scream. He fell. Just fell, like all his strings were cut. The sound that came out of him wasn't human, wasn't anything that had a name. He poured black ashes over his golden head. He clawed at his own perfect face. The Myrmidons had to hold him to keep him from following Patroclus into death right there. In the depths of the sea, Thetis heard her son's grief and knew. Not his death, not yet. But the last thing that had kept him gentle had died, now only wrath remained. All night Achilles held the body. He wouldn't let anyone wash the blood away. That was his task, his right, his last service to the one he loved. Thetis rose from the sea at dawn. She found her son curled around a corpse, transformed into something she barely recognized. Not hero, not man, just grief made flesh. She didn't offer comfort. She knew her son. Instead she asked one question: "What do you want now?" His answer was simple. Hector's death, then his own. Thetis didn't flinch. She had always known. "Then you need armor. Hector wears yours now. I'll bring you something better. Something worthy of your last battle." She went to Hephaestus, god of the forge, who owed her old debts. Through the night, divine hammers rang. The greatest armor ever made took shape in immortal fire. The shield alone took half the night. On its surface Hephaestus forged the world itself. Cities at peace, cities at war. Harvests and weddings and funerals and stars. The breastplate caught light that hadn't been born yet. The greaves fit as if they knew Achilles' legs. The helmet's crest blazed like a comet frozen in bronze. Thetis returned to find Achilles still holding Patroclus, murmuring to the body as if it could hear. She laid the armor at his feet like a funeral gift in reverse. Achilles looked at the armor and something shifted in his face. Not happiness, that was dead. Purpose. The shield showed him the world he would leave behind. "I'll preserve the body," Thetis promised. "Ambrosia will keep him perfect until you return. Go. Kill Hector. Then you can rest together." Achilles stood in the Myrmidon camp and roared. Not words, just sound. Rage and grief compressed into a noise that made horses scream and men fall to their knees. The Trojans heard it on their walls. Women clutched their children. Old men remembered prophecies. Hector felt the armor he'd taken suddenly grow heavy. Agamemnon tried to approach with reconciliation. Achilles cut him off. "Keep the girl. Keep the gold. I don't care anymore. Just don't slow me down." He hadn't eaten in 3 days. His body didn't need food anymore. It ran on fury. The gods themselves would sustain him until his work was done. His horses wept, literally wept, when he mounted the chariot. Xanthus and Balius, immortal horses born from the wind, knew they would never bring their master home. Xanthus spoke. Hera granted him voice for one moment. "We will bring you safe today, mighty Achilles. But your death approaches. We cannot save you from that." The Furies struck the horse silent. Some truths are not meant to be spoken. Achilles whipped the chariot forward, racing toward his glory and his end. The Trojans had come out to fight, confident after weeks of victory. When they saw the new armor blazing on the plain, that confidence died. Achilles didn't fight, he harvested. Every thrust found flesh. Every step left corpses. The Trojans fled in all directions, but he was everywhere at once. 12 young Trojans he captured alive. not for ransom, not for mercy. For Patroclus's funeral pyre, they would burn with the body they helped create. The river Scamander ran red. So many Trojans died in its waters that the river, God himself, rose up in protest. His sacred waters choked with corpses. Monster! The river roared, waves rising against Achilles. You kill more than war demands! You drown my waters in death! The gods themselves curse your excess. Achilles fought the river itself, slashing at waves, cursing as water tried to drag him down. A mortal fighting an immortal river. It should have been impossible. Hephaestus saved him, sent fire to drive the river back. The god who made his armor now protected its wearer. Steam rose where fire met water. The river retreated cursing. Achilles climbed the bank and resumed killing. Nothing would stop him now, not rivers, not gods, not the limits of human endurance. Agenor tried to stand against him, a brave Trojan who thought courage might match Achilles' fury. It could not. He fell in 3 heartbeats. Apollo wrapped himself in Agenor's form and fled, leading Achilles on a chase while the Trojans poured back through their gates. The god bought them precious time. When Apollo revealed the trick, laughing, Achilles screamed at the sky.
Coward god.
If I could, I'd kill you too. No mortal had ever threatened Apollo. He meant it. He turned back toward Troy. The gates were closing. Almost all the Trojans had escaped. But one stood outside waiting, Hector. Priam and Hecuba screamed from the walls. Their son, their precious son, standing alone against doom. They begged him to come inside. He couldn't. Hector had convinced the Trojans to camp outside the walls last night, confident in their advantage. He had been wrong. How could he face them now, having led them to slaughter? But then Achilles came, blazing across the plain, and Hector's courage crumbled. He was brave, but no man can be brave enough when death itself runs toward him. Hector ran. The greatest warrior of Troy fled around his own city's walls, Achilles chasing, the whole world watching. 3 times they circled. Past springs where Trojan women once washed cloves in peacetime. Past the fig tree where children played. Every landmark a reminder of what this war had taken. On Olympus, Zeus lifted his golden scales. He placed the fates of both heroes in the balance. Hector's side sank toward Hades. The decision was made. Athena descended in disguise. Hector's brother Deiphobus. Brother, I've come to help you face him. Together we can stand. Hector stopped running, heart swelling with hope. He turned to face Achilles at last. No more running. Let us swear an oath. The winner will return the loser's body for proper burial. Do you agree? Oaths, Achilles laughed, a terrible sound. Lions don't make oaths with lambs. I'll give your body to the dogs. Now fight me or die begging. They fought, but not for long. Hector was skilled, but he wore armor made for a different body, and he faced a man who no longer cared about living. Hector threw his spear and missed. He turned for another from his brother, but Deiphobus had vanished. There was no brother. There had never been, only Athena's trick. Understanding flooded his face. The gods had chosen. He was going to die. But Hector of Troy would not die cringing. He drew his sword and charged. Achilles knew his own armor perfectly. He knew the one gap, where the collarbones meet the throat. His spear found it like coming home. Hector fell. Still breathing, the spear had missed the windpipe. He could speak. He begged, one last time, for his body to be returned to his parents. Achilles leaned close. Beg more. Your father could pile gold as high as your body. I'd still let dogs eat you. You killed my Patroclus. Now die. With his last breath, Hector prophesied. Paris and Apollo will kill you at these very gates. You'll follow me soon enough. Then death took Troy's defender. Achilles stripped the body. Greeks gathered, and each one stabbed the corpse. A collective defilement. Not so dangerous now. They laughed. Achilles didn't laugh. He pierced Hector's ankles and threaded leather straps through the holes. He tied the straps to his chariot. Then he drove, dragging the body through the dust. Around and around Troy's walls he drove, Priam and Hecuba screaming above, Andromache fainting when she saw, baby Astyanax crying without understanding why. Day after day he returned to drag the body again. 12 days of degradation. But the gods protected Hector's corpse. It stayed perfect, undamaged, waiting. To the Greeks, armor was more than protection. It was identity. The shield your father carried. The helmet your grandfather died wearing. These weren't objects. They were ancestors. When Hector took Achilles' armor from Patroclus, he took more than bronze. He claimed Achilles' legend as his own. He tried to become his enemy. This is why Achilles needed new armor from the gods. His old armor had been violated, worn by his enemy, contaminated by betrayal. He couldn't simply take it back. Hephaestus understood. The new armor wasn't just stronger, it was uniquely Achilles. The shield showed the world he would die defending. The helmet crowned his doom. We still understand this, don't we? Certain objects carry more than their function. A wedding ring, a family photo, a child's drawing. Some things are extensions of ourselves. On the 12th night of Achilles' rage, Patroclus came to him in dreams. The ghost stood by the bed, looking exactly as he had in life, gentle, sad, waiting. "Why haven't you buried me?" Patroclus asked. "I can't enter the underworld. The dead won't let me cross. I wander alone while you drag Hector endlessly." Achilles reached for him and touched nothing. So he wept. "I'll build your pyre tomorrow. We'll burn together eventually. Wait for me on the other side." Patroclus smiled. That gentle smile Achilles would never see again in waking life. "Bury our bones together. That's all I ask. One urn for both of us." The ghost faded with the dawn. Achilles woke with wet cheeks and new purpose. No more dragging. Patroclus needed his funeral. The dead should not have to wait. They built the pyre 100 feet square. They slaughtered oxen, sheep, horses. They brought honey and oil. The 12 Trojan captives stood bound nearby. Achilles cut a lock of his golden hair his father had dedicated to a river god, saved for the day his son came home. That day would never come. He placed Patroclus on the pyre with his own hands. Then he killed the 12 Trojans and threw them on. Fuel for his friend's journey to the underworld. The fire wouldn't catch. The winds had been called away. Achilles prayed to Boreas and Zephyrus, the north and west winds, and they came roaring. All night the pyre burned. Achilles walked around it, calling Patroclus's name, pouring wine on the flames, unable to stop feeding the fire or his grief. Dawn found him collapsed beside the ashes. The Myrmidons gathered Patroclus's bones, white and sacred now, and placed them in a golden bowl for keeping. Achilles held the bowl as if it could break. "When I die," he said, "mix my ashes with his." "One urn," as he asked. "We arrived together. We'll leave together." The funeral games lasted days. Chariot races, wrestling, boxing, all the ways Greeks honored the dead by celebrating life. Achilles watched without competing. His games were over. And still Hector's body lay unburied. The gods argued about it constantly. Apollo raged at the desecration. Hera defended Achilles' right to revenge. Zeus decided. Enough. He sent Thetis to tell Achilles release the body. He sent Iris to tell Priam, go get your son. The king and the killer would meet. Achilles resisted. Let the father come beg. Let him pay ransom. Then maybe, I'll consider it. But Thetis's look told him this wasn't negotiable. Even gods have limits. That same night, Priam loaded a wagon with treasures. Gold robes, ransom for a corpse. His family begged him not to go. He went anyway. A father's love runs one direction. Hermes guided him through the Greek camp unseen. Divine mist wrapped the old king. Guards looked past him. He reached Achilles' tent like a ghost. Priam entered alone. Achilles was eating. His first meal since Patroclus died. The old king crossed the room and did something no one expected. He knelt and kissed Achilles' hands. Think of your own father, Priam whispered. Old like me, waiting for a son who will never come home. I'm doing what he cannot, begging the killer for the body. Something cracked in Achilles. He thought of Peleus. He thought of Patroclus. He looked at this broken old man who had lost everything and saw himself reflected. They wept together, the killer and the father, the Greek and the Trojan. For a moment, in that tent, There was no war. Just grief shared between two men who understood. Achilles raised the old king gently. Enough, your courage exhausts me. Sit, eat with me. We'll return your son when the sun rises. They ate in silence. The first food Priam had taken since Hector died. The first meal Achilles finished since Patroclus fell. Grief had the same taste in both mouths. Priam asked for time. 11 days to bury Hector properly. Achilles agreed and promised the Greeks would not attack during the morning. Troy would have peace to grieve. That night, Priam slept in the tent of his son's killer. Achilles himself washed Hector's body, wrapped it in Priam's finest cloth, laid it in the wagon. Some things you do yourself. Before dawn, Hermes woke Priam. Go now. If Agamemnon sees you, he might not honor Achilles' promise. Take your son and go. Priam returned to Troy with his son's body. The gates opened. The wailing began. Andromache, Hecuba, Helen herself. All of Troy mourned what Achilles had returned. 11 days Troy mourned in peace. They built a pyre, burned the body, gathered the bones in gold. The war would resume, but death had been honored. The Iliad ends here, with Hector buried and Troy still standing. But the story didn't end. The war had more horrors to deliver, more heroes to consume. Achilles returned to battle, knowing his time shortened with every Trojan he killed. He fought like a man racing toward something, rather than away from it. He killed Penthesilea, queen of the Amazons, who had come to help Troy. As she died, their eyes met, and he fell in love with her in the moment of her death. Thersites mocked him for mourning an enemy. Ugly Thersites who had nothing but spite. Achilles killed him with one blow. Another death that didn't matter. He killed Memnon, king of Ethiopia, another ally of Troy. Beautiful and god-born like Achilles himself. Dawn's own son, who wept golden tears when he fell. Zeus weighed their fates before that battle too. Again Achilles' side rose. Again his enemies sank toward Hades. The pattern held until it was Achilles' turn. Thetis watched it all. Her sun burned through enemies like a comet burning through sky. Brilliant, beautiful, and clearly falling. A mother can only watch. Then came the day. Achilles chased Trojans to the Scaean gates, the same gates where Hector had died. The same gates where Hector had prophesied Achilles' death. Paris stood on the wall above. Paris, who started the war, who couldn't fight Achilles man to man. He drew his bow. Apollo guided his aim. The arrow flew. Through all the chaos of battle, through air thick with spears and dust, it found its target, the heel where Thetis's fingers had blocked the sticks. Achilles stumbled, looked down, understood immediately. His mother's protection had always carried his doom inside it. He smiled, they say, before he fell. The greatest warrior who ever lived fell in the dust outside Troy's gates. Not in glorious single combat, killed by a coward's arrow aimed by a resentful god. But he had chosen this. He had always chosen this. The body fell, and for a moment the battlefield froze. Greeks and Trojans alike stared at the impossible sight. Achilles, actually fallen, actually mortal after all. Then chaos erupted. Trojans surged forward to claim the body, to desecrate it as Achilles had desecrated Hector. Greeks threw themselves into the gap to prevent it. Ajax, great Ajax with his tower, shield stood over the body like a lion over its cub. Come take him, he roared at the Trojans.
Come and try.
For hours they fought over the corpse. Men died by dozens trying to reach it. The ground around Achilles became a carpet of bodies, his death still generating death. Finally Odysseus and Ajax together lifted him. Ajax carrying the body, Odysseus fighting off attackers. They retreated step by bloody step toward the ships. Thetis rose from the sea when they reached the shore. The cry she released made the waves themselves recoil. A mother's grief has its own terrible power. She had known. She had always known. But knowing doesn't prepare you. Nothing prepares you for the weight of a child's body in your arms. The Nereids came, all 50 of Thetis's sisters, rising from the deep to mourn. Their keening carried across the water, a choir of immortal sorrow. 17 days they mourned. 17 days of divine and mortal tears mingled. Even the muses came to sing his praises. A hero's death deserves a hero's farewell. On the 18th day they built his pyre, as massive as Patroclus's had been, 100 feet, stacked with sacrifices, ready to carry a hero to eternity. They placed him in his divine armor, the shield showing the world, the helmet with its burning crest. He would meet Patroclus dressed for the battle that never ends. Thetis lit the fire herself. A mother should not have to burn her son, but a goddess does what must be done. The flames took him with surprising gentleness. All night the Greeks watched the blaze. They remembered Achilles young and laughing. They remembered him in rage. Both versions burned together, becoming one legend. At dawn they quenched the fire with wine. They gathered his white bones, carefully, reverently, and placed them in the same golden urn that held Patroclus. Together in one vessel, as both had wished. Whatever the underworld held, they would face it side by side. Death, in the end, was just another country to travel together. They raised a great mound over the urn at the headland. Visible from the sea, a landmark for sailors. There lies Achilles, they would say for generations, the best of us. But the armor remained, Hephaestus's divine craftsmanship, too magnificent to bury. And there lay the seed of new tragedy, who would inherit Achilles' glory. Two heroes claimed it: Ajax, who had saved the body, and Odysseus, who had helped carry it. Both believed they deserved to wear a dead god's bronze. They put it to a vote, or rather, they asked Trojan prisoners who had done more damage. The prisoners, fearing Odysseus's tricks more than Ajax's strength,
chose Odysseus.
Ajax broke. Not his body, his mind. The greatest warrior left alive denied the honor he deserved, felt reality slip away like water through fingers. That night, Athena sent him visions. He saw Greek cattle as his enemies. Odysseus, Agamemnon, all who had wronged him. He slaughtered them by moonlight. Laughing. Dawn brought sanity and horror. Ajax found himself covered in animal blood, surrounded by slaughtered livestock. The laughingstock of an army he had protected for a decade. He couldn't live with the shame. In the Greek world, this was no weakness. A dishonored life was no life at all. Ajax planted his sword in the sand. He threw himself upon it. The sword that had killed Trojans by hundreds now killed its owner with one stroke. Ajax died as he had lived, choosing his own terms. Where his blood soaked the earth, a hyacinth flower grew. The same flower that sprang from Hyacinthus's death, beloved of Apollo. Some deaths bloom into beauty. Odysseus inherited the armor he'd won and the guilt of what his victory cost. He wore it, they say, but it never quite fit. Some honors weigh more than they should. Without Achilles, the Greeks needed a new champion. Without Achilles, they needed another way to win. The war had always been about more than strength. It was Odysseus who conceived the wooden horse, the trick that would do what 10 years of fighting could not. Achilles had been their sword. Odysseus was their key. Troy fell. The city Achilles had died trying to burn was finally burned by cleverness. Priam died. Hector's son was thrown from the walls. Andromache became a slave. Every terrible thing Achilles had feared leaving undone. Odysseus and the others finished. The war ended, but its echoes would ripple through centuries. Some stories never really stop. Let the story breathe now. We've raced through battles and grief. Let's return to the quieter moments. The spaces between the violence where Achilles was most himself. Remember him on Pelion, young and golden, learning to love music as much as war. Chiron taught him the lyre, and he played it beautifully. Those same hands that killed hundreds. During his withdrawal from battle, it was the lyre he turned to. Not weapons, not rage, music. As if that earlier self was still alive inside the angry man. Homer tells us Patroclus sat across from him, waiting for the song to end before speaking. The image of that patience. Knowing Achilles needed the music more than conversation. The Iliad says, he sang the famous deeds of men. Heroes' stories, like the one he was living. Even then, he was becoming legend. There's something almost unbearable about that detail. A man singing about fame while choosing the death that will grant it. The artist and the subject merge. He was not only violence. That's what the rage makes us forget. Before Patroclus died, Achilles could be gentle, could heal. Chiron taught him medicine alongside killing. He taught his friend Phoenix when the old man went blind from grief. He protected the weaker Greeks from bullying commanders. He was complicated, as the best of us are. The Greeks he fought with feared him, yes, but they also loved him. He shared his spoils generously. He led from the front, never asking men to face what he wouldn't. When the embassy came begging him to return, even his refusal showed honor. He fed them, gave them beds, treated them with hospitality despite his fury at their king. I hate like the gates of Hades. He told them, the man who says one thing and hides another in his heart. Achilles couldn't be anything but what he was, transparent as fire. Contrast him with Odysseus, clever Odysseus, who lied as easily as breathing. Achilles couldn't dissemble if his life depended on it. And eventually, his life did depend on it. His mother's visits remind us he was still a son. Thetis, who could have stayed in the sea, kept rising to comfort him. The pull between immortal and mortal, caught in one family. She couldn't save him, not really. But she could bring him armor. She could carry his complaints to Zeus. She could be present. Sometimes that's all parents can do. Even his rage at Agamemnon, that terrible war-changing rage, grew from love. Love of honor, yes, but also love of Briseis, of Patroclus, of the Myrmidons whose deaths his withdrawal caused. We call his emotions extreme, but were they? His best friend was killed. His honor was stripped publicly. His death was certain. Perhaps his feelings matched his circumstances. The question the Iliad keeps asking: what do we owe each other? What does a leader owe his warriors? What does a warrior owe his leader? Where does honor become suicide? Agamemnon believed a king could do as he pleased. Achilles believed merit must be recognized. Neither was entirely wrong. Neither was entirely right. That's what makes it tragedy. Think about Briseis in all this. A woman passed between men, her grief for her first family ignored, finding unexpected kindness in her captor's tent. When she was taken to Agamemnon, she wept, not for freedom, but for leaving Achilles. The story gives her one moment of voice, and she uses it to grieve what she'd found. Later, over Patroclus's body, she would weep again. For the man who promised to make her Achilles' true wife, who treated her with kindness. The war's collateral damage, mourning its cruelty. These women's stories matter too, though Homer barely tells them. Behind every warrior's glory, women burned in their captured cities, carried into slavery, erased from the record. Achilles saw Briseis as a person, not just property. That's not nothing, in that world. Small humanity in vast inhumanity. Perhaps that's all war allows. But let's not make him saint. He killed her brothers, burned her city, took her freedom. Kindness within captivity is still captivity. The myth doesn't let us choose simple readings. That complexity is why the story survives. We don't return to simple tales for millennia. We return to the ones that contain contradictions. Like us. Hector was simpler in some ways. A good man, a good husband, fighting for home. But even Hector ran from Achilles. Even Hector was human enough for fear. And when Achilles gave Hector's body back to Priam, we saw something else. Mercy surviving rage, humanity outlasting vengeance. That scene changes everything that came before it. Was that the real Achilles? The one who wept with Priam? Or was the real one the man who dragged Hector's corpse for 12 days? The myth says both. The myth says yes. We contain multitudes, as a poet once said. Achilles contained multitudes loud enough to echo for 3,000 years. Perhaps that's what being fully alive looks like. Now let's talk about choice. The choice that defines him. Long life and obscurity, or short life and eternal fame. Thetis told him early. He chose knowing. Some versions say he wavered. When Odysseus found him on Skyros, part of him wanted to stay hidden. The woman's disguise wasn't entirely acting. It was also hope. But when the war horn sounded, his body knew what his mind debated. The warrior answered before the man could think. Some fates are written in blood and bone. Maybe that's what fate really means. Not prophecy imposed from outside, but nature expressing itself. Achilles chose Troy because Achilles was Achilles. The oracle just read what already existed. There's comfort in that reading. He wasn't a puppet. He was a man who wanted certain things more than others. Glory more than safety, intensity more than duration. And there's terror too. Because maybe we all make the same choice, moment by moment. Every decision for passion over prudence, every risk taken, every safe path refused. The myth asks, knowing you will die, how do you want to have lived? Achilles answered clearly. We answer every day, whether we notice or not. Patroclus made a different choice. He chose Achilles. Not fame, not glory, not his own legend, just the person he loved, followed wherever that led. History remembers Achilles. History remembers Patroclus because of Achilles. But without Patroclus, who would Achilles have been? The gentle part came from somewhere. Perhaps that's the myth's deepest truth: we are made by our loves. Achilles was made by Patroclus. Patroclus was made by Achilles. What we love creates us. But who told us this story first? A blind poet named Homer, they said. Though Homer might have been many singers, their voices merged into one name across dark centuries. Before writing, stories traveled by mouth. Each singer added something, changed something, forgot and invented. The Achilles we know was shaped by hundreds of tellings. Think of a song covered by different artists, each version adding new meaning. That's how the Iliad grew. Centuries of performances before anyone wrote it down. What survived wasn't random. The scenes that audiences loved were repeated, refined, polished by competition. The Achilles and Priam scene. People must have asked for that one again and again. So when you hear this story, you're hearing what moved people for generations before Homer. Human truth, tested by time, polished by love, we inherit collective wisdom. The Trojans who survived never forgot Achilles. For them, he was death incarnate. The golden terror that took their sons, their king, their future. Greek villages claimed his bones, his armor, his descendants. Every family wanted connection to the greatest. The myth became property, fought over like Troy itself. Alexander the Great slept with the Iliad under his pillow. He visited Achilles' tomb before conquering Persia. He wanted to be the new Achilles. Brief, brilliant, mourned forever. He got his wish. Alexander died at 32, having conquered the known world. Like Achilles, he chose the short blaze. Like Achilles, he's remembered forever. Romans claimed descent from the Trojans, not the Greeks. For them, Achilles became villain, the brute who killed noble Hector. Same story, opposite reading. Virgil wrote Aeneas as Achilles' opposite. Patient, duty-bound, sacrificing personal love for Rome's future. The anti-Achilles became Roman hero. Medieval readers barely knew the Iliad. Greek was lost to Western Europe. They reimagined Troy through Roman eyes, making Trojans ancestors of French and British kings. Achilles appeared in medieval romances as an exotic figure, a pagan warrior who loved unwisely. They added stories never found in Homer. Achilles in love with Polyxena, Priam's daughter. The Renaissance brought Homer back. Scholars relearned Greek, rediscovered the original text, marveled at what had been lost. Achilles returned to glory, properly understood at last. Painters made him central to classical art. Rubens, Poussin, Ingres. Each age saw him differently: triumphant, tragic, erotic, violent. The mirror showed what each era wanted to see. Poets claimed him too. Tennyson, H.D. Odin. Each generation needed to rewrite Achilles for themselves. The story generous enough to bear endless retelling. In the 20th century, war poets found him everywhere. After the trenches, Achilles of rage and grief felt newly relevant. These soldiers knew that particular madness. A psychiatrist named Jonathan Shea wrote about Vietnam veterans and Achilles. He found the same patterns. Grief becoming rage, becoming dissociation. The story describes PTSD before we named it. Achilles loses his closest friend. He isolates himself. He refuses to eat. When he returns to combat, he fights with reckless disregard for his own life. The pattern holds. Veterans who read the Iliad recognize themselves. Something about being seen across 3,000 years helps. The myth becomes therapy, ancient words healing modern wounds. And gay readers found their history in Achilles and Patroclus. The text never names their bond, but it describes love too deep for easy categories. The Greeks didn't separate friendship from eros the way we do. Some saw them as lovers, some as companions. Perhaps the labels matter less than the intensity. What matters? When Patroclus died, Achilles wanted to die too. When Achilles died, they were buried in one urn. The commitment was absolute, whatever name we give it. The myth gives us permission to love wholly, not moderately, not safely, but with the full weight of ourselves, knowing the cost, accepting it anyway. That's a dangerous permission, but it's also beautiful. Some loves are worth dying for, the myth says. Some connections justify everything they cost. Stories like this teach us how to feel. They give us vocabulary for emotions we couldn't name without them. They make us human by showing us humans at their limits. Your breathing has probably deepened by now. Your shoulders softened. The story does its work while seeming to do something else entirely. That's the oldest magic. The fire of Troy has cooled. Achilles' anger has burned out. Let's move toward endings now, not the story's end, but the feeling of settling, of completion. Remember Peleus, Achilles' mortal father, waiting at home in Phthia. He never saw his son again. The lock of hair Achilles cut for Patroclus's funeral was promised to a river near home. When Achilles imagined Priam's grief, he thought of Peleus. He too waits for a son. He too will receive only news of death. The recognition unmade his rage. That moment, enemy seeing enemy as human, might be the myth's real treasure. Not the battles, not the glory. The pause where wrath becomes something softer. If Achilles could feel that, anyone can. If rage that swallowed an army could dissolve into shared tears, there's hope for the rest of us. His heel, though. We should talk about the heel. The weakness that killed him. The mother's grip that made him and doomed him in one gesture. Achilles' heel entered language itself. Any fatal weakness, any hidden vulnerability. We speak him without knowing. His death become metaphor for all our mortal limits. Your own weakness, whatever makes you vulnerable, is also what makes you specific. Without it, you'd be generic, invincible, unreal. The heel makes Achilles human. What would he have been? Invulnerable entirely. An uninteresting monster, probably. A force of nature rather than a man. We can't love what has no softness. His vulnerability came from his mother's love. The hand that tried to save him created the opening that killed him. Love's protection is always imperfect. Always. Thetis couldn't hold him forever. The river water couldn't touch every inch. Something always escapes our grasp. That's not failure. That's mortality. That's love. So Paris's arrow found what it was looking for. Apollo's aim found the gap love left. And Achilles fell, finally, into the rest he'd been racing toward since he chose glory. The Iliad doesn't show his death. It ends with Hector's funeral. But we know what came after. Stories don't hide from us. They just arrange the telling. Walk through any museum and you'll find him. Browse any streaming service and his face appears. Achilles refuses to stay in antiquity. He keeps showing up, demanding attention. Brad Pitt played him in Troy, beautiful doomed, wrestling with glory and its price. The movie simplified, but the core remained. Who do we become when we can't lose? Video games let you play as Achilles now. Control his sword, feel his power, die his death repeatedly until you learn the pattern. Interactive mortality lessons. Young adult novels reimagine his love for Patroclus with modern frankness. A generation reads the Song of Achilles and weeps at deaths 3,000 years old. The grief stays fresh. Achilles lives because we keep telling him. Every retelling revives him. Every listener who cares extends his immortality another generation. This is the glory he chose. The ancient sources say his shade appeared to the Greeks before they sailed home. Achilles' ghost, demanding one final sacrifice. Polyxena, Priam's daughter, slain on his tomb. Terrible, yes, The Greeks were terrible. Achilles was terrible. The myths don't sanitize. They show us what humans do, have done, might do. The warning and the record both. But also this, the myths say Achilles and Medea married in the underworld. Or that he went to the White Island, a paradise for heroes. Multiple afterlives, because one story isn't enough. When Odysseus visited the underworld, he met Achilles' shade. The ghost said something that changes everything we thought we understood about glory's bargain. I'd rather be a slave in the world above, Achilles said, serving some landless peasant, than king of all these dead. Glory in death seemed like a bad trade. Did he mean it? Or was this just death talking? The living can't know what the dead truly feel. Perhaps both statements are true. Glory worth dying for, and death still bitter. The Greeks told both versions. The choice for glory and the regret from death. They held the contradiction because life holds contradictions. The myth teaches us to do the same. So where does that leave us, listeners drifting towards sleep? With a story that refuses easy answers. With a hero who was monster and mourner both. With permission to be complicated. Your eyes are heavy now, perhaps. The story has wound through rage and grief and come to something quieter. Let that quietness settle. Let the ancient voices fade to whisper. Achilles rests now. Patroclus rests with him. Their bones are mingled, their story told, their glory assured for another generation. They've earned their sleep. So have you. The Aegean still rolls against the shores where they fought. The stars that watch Troy burn still shine. Time erases cities but not stories. You carry them now. But before sleep claims you, one last image. The moment the arrow struck. Achilles looking down at his heel, then up at the sky, then nowhere at all. They say he smiled. The witnesses insist on it. Not a grimace, an actual smile. As if death were a door he'd been looking for, finally found, finally opening. In his last heartbeat, he wasn't the greatest warrior. He wasn't rage or glory or wrath. He was just a man going to meet the one he loved most. We all become that, in the end. He fell. The golden helmet rolled, the armor rang against stone. Then silence. The silence after a great story ends. The silence we leave for you now. Dream of wine, dark seas and bronze, tipped spears. Dream of love that outlasts death. Dream of Achilles, golden, flawed, eternal, finding his rest, as you find yours. What does Achilles mean? After all these hours, after all these deaths, what does the myth want us to carry away? Let's gather the threads before we rest. First, the choice. Every human faces it, though few so starkly. Safe mediocrity or dangerous excellence, a long quiet life or a short blazing one. Most of us choose something in between, moments of intensity within generally careful lives. And that's wisdom, probably. Achilles' way isn't for everyone, shouldn't be. But the myth reminds us that the choice exists. We can always choose differently. The safe path isn't mandatory. That knowledge itself is a kind of freedom. Second, wrath and its costs. Achilles' anger was justified. Agamemnon did dishonor him, but the rage consumed more than its target. His own people died, his friend died. When we nurse our angers, even righteous ones, we rarely hurt only those who hurt us. The collateral damage spreads. The myth measures that cost precisely. But also, the myth doesn't say, don't be angry. Achilles' wrath is treated as inevitable, even heroic. Sometimes anger is the only appropriate response to injustice. The wisdom isn't, suppress your anger. It's, know what your anger costs. Choose it if you choose it, but see the price clearly. The myth demands open eyes. Third, love that transcends. Achilles and Patroclus showed what total devotion looks like. Beautiful and devastating. Love without reservation, held back by nothing. We're taught to be careful with our hearts, and we should be mostly. But the myth offers another model. The love that holds nothing back, consequences accepted in advance. Fourth, mortality as gift. The heel that made Achilles killable also made him lovable. His vulnerability humanized him. Without death possible, what would life mean? The gods watched Achilles with envy. Some sources say they couldn't feel as he felt, couldn't risk as he risked. Immortality is its own kind of prison. We who will die can love completely, because we know it ends. We can be brave, because we know the cost. Our limits make our virtues possible. Fifth, the story survives. 3,000 years, and we still tell it. Achilles wanted his name remembered, and it is. By you tonight, the bargain honored. But not just his name, his questions. What matters? What's worth dying for? How do we treat our enemies? The myth keeps asking, and we keep trying to answer. That's what stories are for. Not answers, but better questions. The Iliad doesn't tell you how to live. It shows you lives lived intensely, and asks, what do you see? Perhaps you see a warning, perhaps inspiration, perhaps a tragedy of wasted potential, or a triumph of lived authenticity. The myth contains all readings. Tonight, exhausted and drifting, you don't need to choose a meaning. Let the story settle into you without forcing interpretation. The meaning will find you when you need it. Achilles asked the hardest question knowing you'll die. How will you live? He answered one way. You'll answer another. Both answers honor the question. That's the meaning maybe. Not what Achilles did, but that he chose deliberately. Not his specific choice, but the act of choosing. May your choices be as clear, even if different. Achilles left more than a story. He left fingerprints across Western civilization. In words we use, in how we think about heroism, in questions we still can't answer. Every time someone speaks of an Achilles heel, they resurrect him. The phrase lives in dozens of languages now, Russian, Japanese, Arabic. His weakness became universal vocabulary. The Achilles tendon, that cord connecting calf to heel, bears his name in every anatomy textbook. Medical students learn his story through their own bodies, immortality in sinew. Artists couldn't stop painting him. Rubens made him golden and muscular. Delacroix painted his education. Trombley scrawled his name across canvases. Each age reinvents its Achilles. Writers kept returning to him. Dante placed him in hell's circle of lust. Tennyson imagined his restless ghost. Derek Walcott reimagined him in the Caribbean. The myth migrates. Psychologists found him useful too. The Achilles complex. The need to prove oneself through conflict. We name our patterns after him. Still trying to understand what drove him, and always the question of Patroclus. Scholars debate, readers imagine, writers reimagine. Were they lovers? Brothers in arms? Something without modern name. The ambiguity is part of the gift. Queer readers found ancestors in their bond. Soldiers found brotherhood. Grieving friends found permission for their depths of feeling. The myth holds space for all of them. That's his truest legacy, perhaps. Not the rage or the glory, but the space he opened. A story big enough for everyone who needs it. Room to find yourself in ancient words. He chose to be remembered. And here we are, remembering. The contract holds. The story passes on. Tomorrow, someone else will hear it for the first time. Achilles endures. The fire has burned low now. The story has been told. Outside, the same stars shine that watched over Troy. Unchanged, patient, keeping their ancient vigil. Achilles sleeps now. Patroclus beside him, as promised. The Aegean whispers against shores that remember nothing and everything. Some things don't need waking. Let your breath slow now. Match it to those waves. In and out. And out. The rhythm that rocked Greek ships carries you toward rest. Oh no, why the night is soft. Distant water. Wind through olive branches. Crickets in dry grass. The Mediterranean dark, warm and forgiving. Way somewhere, a shepherd's fire. Somewhere, a mother singing. The old sounds of the old world. Holding you the way they've held sleepers for millennia. The heroes are quiet. The gods have turned away. Only the wind remains, carrying nothing but itself. Only the stars holding their positions. Feel how heavy your limbs have become. How the bed holds you like water, let it. You don't need to hold yourself up tonight, you're held. The wine dark sea. The rosy-fingered dawn that will come without you. The story settling into your memory like sediment, becoming part of you. Rest now. Dream if you dream. The myth will be here when you return, patient as it's always been. 3,000 years of patience. It can wait one more night. Oh, and Eloy, good night. Sleep well. May your dreams be kinder than Achilles, and your waking as brave. Until another story, another night, good night.